Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us today for the 2018 Risk Assessment Questionnaire. My name is Estella Tong. Joining me as speakers today are two of my colleagues, Alison Guy and Navina Pachiva. We also have Dan Brown, Teresa D'Amata, and Jeff Salkett here for the Q&A session to answer questions that relate to specific sections of the questionnaire. Although you can send us your questions during the entire course of the webinar, we ask that you send your questions to us as early as possible so that we can group them by section when we respond to them. We will leave enough time at the end for questions. However, if we cannot get to your questions during the webinar, we will respond to them by email. This is our standard disclaimer page. Please take a minute to read it over. As you can see, we have quite a full agenda today. It includes an introduction to the Risk Assessment Questionnaire. I will also highlight some of the key changes from previous years and provide a high-level illustration on how to navigate the questionnaire. Then Alison is going to review some of the common questions that we received from registrants in the past that could still be applicable for the questionnaire this year. After that, Navina is going to take you through the Prospectus-Exempt fund data collection process. Part 5 is a summary of the resources that we provide, and then we'll go into the question and answer session at the end. So, what is the purpose of the Risk Assessment Questionnaire? DOSC has a large number of registered firms under its direct supervision. As such, we apply a risk-based approach to oversee and monitor our registrants. We use the information that we collect to support our oversight activities and evidence-based decision-making. We have listed the key changes in this year's questionnaire on slides 7 and 8. The key changes relate mainly to the new design of the electronic form. As you may have noticed already, there's a separate form for each section of the questionnaire this year. A complete set of the questionnaire includes the general section, which has to be completed by all registrants, a section for the investment fund managers, a section for the portfolio managers and restricted portfolio managers, a section for the exempt market dealers and restricted dealers, and a section for the investment fund managers to complete only if they also manage prospectus-exempt investment funds. Separating the forms allow multiple people to work on it simultaneously. For example, Person A can work on the general section, while Person B works on the investment fund manager section. However, just make sure that only one person works on a section at a time. Using the previous example, if Person A is working on the general section, Person B must not open the general section and start answering the questions. Doing so will cause a problem. Any information entered may not be captured by the system. So what are the other key changes? We have developed a home page for the questionnaire. It is a central area for key information, and it is where you can find a status table that allows you to open the sections of the questionnaire that are applicable to your firm. The home page is also where you can download the spreadsheets for questions related to referral arrangements and founders fee arrangements, or the spreadsheet relating to the Prospectus-Exempt fund form. We have also created a help page for each section of the questionnaire. The help pages provide guidance to some commonly asked questions relating to that section. To give you an example, registrants have asked what's the definition of investor client for questions in the exempt market dealer section. So, when you are in the exempt market dealer section, you can click on the help icon on the toolbar and open up the help page where you can find the answer to this question. We have also standardized the information collection period for the questionnaire and also for the Prospectus-Exempt fund form. We are asking for information as of December 31st, 2017 for all questions. There is only one exception, which is the first question in the general section, where you can provide your total revenues and specify Ontario revenue based on your fiscal year end. We just want to make it easier for you to compile the information so you don't have to do any recalculations. Last but not least, there are 2 due dates for the form this year. The first one, May 30th, 2018, is for the 4 sections of the questionnaires, which are the general, the portfolio manager, the investment fund manager, and the exempt market dealer sections. The second one, June 30th, 2018, is for the Prospectus-Exempt fund form, where you can provide fund level information about your Prospectus-Exempt funds. The URL link that we sent you in the April 18 email is customized and unique to your firm. You can use it to access your firm's questionnaire even after you have completed and submitted all the sections. The link is going to remain open at least until June 30th. We ask that you do not forward the link to people who are not authorized to have access to your firm's questionnaire. As mentioned earlier, the questionnaire has 4 sections, plus the Prospectus-Exempt fund form. The diagram on slide number 10 is what we call a status table. It is customized according to your firm's registration categories, and it contains only the sections that are applicable to your firm. The diagram here shows you a status table for a firm that is registered as a portfolio manager, an investment fund manager, and an exempt market dealer. In this example, the firm must complete all 4 sections of the questionnaire, which are the first 4 rows of the table. And all these sections of the form have a May 30th due date. Since the firm is also registered with the OSC as an investment fund manager, it also receives the Prospectus-Exempt fund form, which is the last row of the table. Whether or not the firm needs to complete this form depends on whether the firm is the investment fund manager for any Prospectus-Exempt investment funds. If you are, you must complete the Prospectus-Exempt fund form, and the due date for this form is June 30th. So since the questionnaire is customized to your firm's registration categories, it is important that you review the registration categories listed on the home page. If there are any discrepancies, please call us immediately. And if the information is correct, make sure you follow the instruction and click on the link to confirm the validity of the information. Here is a list of the web browsers that the questionnaire supports. We do not suggest using other browsers. Doing so may affect the functionality or performance of the questionnaire. Also, beware that after 2 hours of inactivity, the session will expire and any unsafe data will be lost. The questionnaire will not close by itself after 2 hours of inactivity. It stays open, and you can still see the page that you were working on 2 hours ago. It is only when you click on the Save button to re-establish the connection to our server that a notice is going to come up to tell you that the session has expired. So we strongly encourage you to save the form once every 15 minutes and before you leave the computer. You don't want to lose any of the information that you spend so much time to enter. Slide number 13 introduces you to the icons on the toolbar. The Help icon gives you access to the Help page dedicated to the sessions that you are in. If you are in the General section, like this diagram, the Help page will be for questions in the General sections only. The FAQ and User Guide icons give you access to a 2-part document that we prepared. The FAQ provides answers to some frequently asked questions regarding the questionnaire in general, whereas the User Guide provides guidance with illustration to assist you in navigating the online questionnaire. We strongly encourage you to review the information in the FAQ and User Guide before starting to complete the questionnaire. The other icons are self-explanatory, so I won't talk about them in details here. We cannot stress how important it is for you to save your questionnaire frequently. Save once every 15 minutes to avoid losing the information that you entered. If the information is saved successfully on our secure server, you will see the same message as illustrated on this slide. You then have a choice to either go back to the home page or close the session. When you open up the online form, you will notice that some parts are highlighted in yellow. Fields highlighted in yellow are the mandatory fields. Sometimes a field can turn yellow because of the selection that you made. For example, in this diagram, if you select the answer Other, provide details in comment box below. The comment box corresponding to that answer is going to turn yellow, looking for additional input from you. You must complete all mandatory fields before submitting the questionnaire, otherwise the system will not accept your submission. So it's always a good practice to check whether you have completed all mandatory fields on one page before moving on to the next one. Otherwise, you might end up having to spend time searching for the missing fields at the end. As you select your answers or enter information into the online questionnaire, an error message may appear indicating that something is not right. The system checks if your response meets certain criteria. For example, if the response is reasonable under the circumstances, or if it is within the allowable range. The diagram on slide 16 is taken from question G1 in the general section. The first row of the table requires you to enter the total gross revenue of the firm, and the second row requires you to enter the firm's specified Ontario revenue. In this diagram, the total gross revenue of the firm is 0 for fiscal 2017. However, $100,000 is entered as specified Ontario revenue for the same fiscal year. So how is that possible? The form lets you know right away that there's an error in the information entered. The message also explains that Ontario revenue must be less than or equal to the total revenue for the same year. The error message on slide 17 is one that you would receive after you click on the submit icon, but the system cannot process the submission because something is not quite right. It could be because of a combination of different reasons. For example, the inputted values are not permitted, or some of the mandatory fields have not been completed, such as the required comment boxes, the UDP certification, or the required attachments. Once you click OK, the system will take you to the first page of the form where an issue was found. Once you have corrected the issue, you can try submitting the form again, or you can review the form for missing fields before submitting the form again. There are other examples of error messages in the user guide if you want to find out what they mean. So this is a good segue to talk about submitting your questionnaire. First of all, save before you submit. This is important to avoid any data loss during the submission process. Also, make sure that you are satisfied with your responses before submitting the form, which means that you have first reviewed the information provided. Not only for the information in the section that you're submitting, you also want to have a chance to review all the sections together just to make sure that the information provided are consistent. Secondly, you want to make sure that your UDP has reviewed the form before you submit it. It is because once a section has been submitted, the form is locked and no more changes is allowed. So once you're satisfied with your responses, you can click on the submit icon to submit the form. The submit icon can be found on the last page of each section. Once you have successfully submitted a section, you will see the confirmation as in the diagram on slide 19. This may take a few minutes, particularly when the server is busy, like the date of May 30th. So do not close the browser until you receive the confirmation with the submission ID. The submission ID will also be shown on the first page of the form, so don't worry if you forget to print a copy of this confirmation page because the same information can be found on the form itself. If you receive this error message, it means that the submission has not been processed. Try closing the browser and reopening it again. This may clear the problem in most cases, and you can resubmit the form again. So this concludes part 2 of the agenda, And I'm going to pass it over to Allison.
Thank you, Estella. I am now going to go through some of the common questions that registrants might have on the questionnaire. While Estella has discussed some of the new features with the questionnaire, for the most part, there has been very little change in the actual questions in each of the sections compared to the last questionnaire in 2016. Okay, so let's start off with some very general questions that we often receive from registrants. As Estella mentioned, every registrant has to complete the general section of the questionnaire. Your categories of registration will then determine what other sections you have to complete. The first question on this slide is there a difference in how a registrant should respond to questions in the general section compared to questions in the specific registration category section? The answer is yes. Responses to questions in the general section should reflect the business activities at the firm level, while responses to questions in the PM, IFM, and EMD sections should reflect those respective business lines. Moving on to the next question on the slide. What time period should a registrant apply to the questions? Some of the questions have a specific time period stated in the actual question, and some of the questions have no specific time period. Where there is no time period stated, use December 31st, 2017. I have listed 3 questions on this next slide. Firstly, how does a registrant respond to the questions when newly registered? For each question, complete it to the best of your ability. Where appropriate, answer with 0 or not applicable, and where possible, provide commentary that you are a new registrant and the reason why the answers are 0 or not applicable, etc. Next version. How does a registrant respond if it is inactive but they have not applied to surrender their registration? If there has been no trading business, or no advising business, or no managing of investment funds, but the firm continues to be registered in Ontario, the questionnaire must be completed. For each question, complete it to the best of your ability. Where appropriate, answer with 0 or not applicable, and where possible, provide commentary that you are an inactive, dormant registrant, the reasons why the answers are 0 or not applicable, and explain why you are continuing to maintain registration in Ontario. And then the last question on the slide. How does a registrant respond if they operate a business model that is different? As we keep saying, all registrants are required to complete the questionnaire. Similar to the other questions, for each question, just complete it to the best of your ability. Where appropriate, answer 0 or not applicable, and where possible, provide commentary about your business model and the reason why the answers are 0 or not applicable, etc. Moving on now to a common question about how to answer the questionnaire if your firm is not located in Ontario. I will just keep saying that all firms that are registered with the OSC must complete the questionnaire. So if the registrant is located outside of Canada, fill out the general section based on your worldwide activities, and for each specific registration category, respond to questions based on your Canadian operations. If a registrant is located within Canada and your principal regulator is another provincial regulator, all of the firm's operations should be considered when responding to the questions. And lastly, if a registrant is registered with both the OSC and an SRO, then only consider your non-SRO operations when answering the questions. Remember, the dealer questions are for exempt market dealers and not mutual fund dealers. I'm now going to go through a few sections specific in the general section questionnaire. Again, these are areas that we typically have registrants ask us questions about. So let's start with question G10, which asks about referral arrangements. The question is copied on the slide for you. Importantly, you have two ways to provide information for your response. If you have 100 or less referral arrangements, then complete the table that will appear when you select this option. This is all that you have to do. If you have more than 100 referral arrangements, then use the table to input the information on the first 100 arrangements and then complete the attached spreadsheet providing information on the balance of the referral arrangements. So just to be clear, if you have a total of 150 referral arrangements, the first 100 would be entered into the table and the remaining 50 arrangements would be included in the attached spreadsheet. You will find the spreadsheet on the home page to attach. Once you have attached the spreadsheet, you can then click on the iClass icon to open it. Slide 26 here includes a screenshot of the table that has to be completed for the referral arrangements. So similar to the referral arrangement question, question G11 in the general section is about finder's fees. And again, there are two ways to provide the information. The table for this question will allow for the input of up to 50 finder's fee arrangements. If you have more than 50 finder's fee arrangements or more than 10 individuals associated with a finder arrangement, complete the table for the first 50 and then complete the spreadsheet provided for the balance and attach it to your rack. Another point I just want to touch on, which we are commonly asked about, is what is the difference between a referral fee arrangement and a finder's fee arrangement? Unfortunately, I don't have an easy answer for you here because it can be very fact specific. The first place to look for an understanding is section 13.7 of National Instrument 31103, which provides the definitions for client, referral arrangement, and referral fee. There is no definition within securities law for the term finder's fee. The next place to go to is the 2014 Annual Summary Report for Dealers, Advisors, and Investment Fund Managers, which is OSC Staff Notice 33-745. In OSC Staff Notice 33-745, staff provided guidance to assist with understanding referral arrangements and finders. These are the only source points that you can look at. In general, it may be that if the arrangement does not fall within the definitions for referral arrangements under section 13.7 of National Instrument 31103, then it may be a finder's fee arrangement depending on the facts of the situation. So this now concludes looking at the general section questions, and I will move on to the portfolio manager section and discuss some of the questions. I first want to clarify the difference between advising activity and dealing activity, and how a registrant should report each type of activity. Activity where the firm is providing advisory services to clients is generally advising activity and should be included in your responses to the questions in the PM section of the questionnaire. Activity where the firm is selling, distributing, or trading exempt market products to clients that do not have an advisory relationship with the firm is more likely to be dealing activity and should be included in your responses to the questions in the EMD section of the questionnaire. We want to draw your attention to question P1, which is asking about your assets under management for your Canadian advisory services as at December 31st, 2017 and 2016. Your responses need to be separated between individual clients and institutional clients. Individuals are natural persons and their personal holding companies, foundations, or trusts. Institutions include non-individuals such as investment funds, pension plans, corporations, university endowments, charitable organizations, and any other type of client that is not an individual. Please ensure that you divide up your assets under management for the type of client. Question P1 also asks you to provide the approximate percentage of your total assets under management for each investment product as applicable. For investment funds managed by your firm, specify the underlying type of securities held within the investment fund, such as equities or fixed income. For investment funds managed by another party, specify the type of fund, such as prospectus qualified funds, exchange traded funds. Moving on now to question P5, which is asking if you are actively involved in the management of the companies you invest in for your clients. In answering this question, please consider the activities of your registered individuals, your firm's officers, directors, employees, and permitted individuals. Another area where we typically get a lot of questions is question P7, which is asking for information on the age of clients. For those of you who are also registered as EMDs, the same question is also included in the EMD section questionnaire. Your response should include natural persons who are 60 years or older. This means you should exclude investment companies or any other entity, institution, etc. from your response. Where possible, please provide an exact percentage or as accurate a response as possible. This now concludes our look at some of the questions within the PM section of the questionnaire. I will now move on to discuss a few questions from the IFM section of the questionnaire. The first question in this section is asking you about the assets under management of investment funds that you are the investment fund manager for. If you have a fund of fund structure, then the assets under management should only be counted once. For example, if top fund, which has assets under management of $50 million, is 100% invested in bottom fund, which has assets under management of $100 million, you should report a total of 2 funds and assets under management of $100 million. If you are the IFM for any prospectus qualified funds that have at least a full year of performance, then you are required to report the performance returns in question F3. The performance return information should be reported net of fees. Report this information at the fund level or the fund series level. If you report at the fund series level, then use the fund series that has the greatest assets under management. Moving on now to question F5, which is asking IFMs if trust accounts are used to process investor transactions. A trust account is a bank account designated as a trust account. The account is used to hold cash for investment in or on the redemptions of securities of an investment fund. Another question I need to highlight to you today is question F19, which is asking you to report net asset value errors in the past 12 months ending December 31st, 2017. This is a question that we get many inquiries on. I think the easiest way to explain this question is to provide a practical example for you. The example scenario is detailed on the slide and how it should be reported. The background is that an incident affected the valuation of a fund over a 5-day period. The fund has 3 classes of security holders. The net asset value is struck daily, and the incident resulted in 15 restatements of net asset value. You would report this as 1 net asset value error and 15 restatements of net asset value. This was the last question in the IFM section that I wanted to highlight to you. So now I'll move on to the final section in the questionnaire, the EMD section. Before we start looking at the questions in this section, I just want to stress that if a firm is registered in multiple categories, their responses to this section should only relate to the activities the firm carries out as a dealer or restricted dealer in the exempt market. I mentioned earlier, but please remember the reference to dealer in the questionnaire are referring to exempt market dealer or restricted dealer. It does not mean mutual fund dealer. Your responses should be based on actual results and activities carried out. Theoretical results and future plans can be provided in the comment box at the end of the questionnaire. One of the first questions the EMD section asks is an area that we usually get a lot of inquiries about. Question E2 is asking for information about the firm's investment clients and capital raised. As you can see on the slide, there are 2 columns that need to be completed by the firm. I'll go through a general meeting of investor clients and capital raised to help you. Generally, investor client means all the individual and or institutional clients the registered firm has actively serviced or distributed traded exempt products to during the 2-year period ending December 31st, 2017. Investor clients can include both new clients and existing clients who the registered firm provides transactional or ongoing services to or distributes exempt products to. Moving on now for completing the capital raise column. Generally, capital raised means the total amount of funds raised from the registered firm's investor clients through the distribution or trading of securities. The capital raised amount should be the gross amount, which means you should include any fees. All values in the questionnaire should be reported in Canadian dollars. Another question that we commonly receive inquiries on is about the role of the Chief Compliance Officer, the CCO. We know that many registrants have a CCO who is also registered in the category of dealing representative. Question E5 is asking if your CCO also acts as a dealing representative for your firm. You can respond to question E5 with no if your CCO is not acting as a dealing representative, meaning he or she has not acted as a dealer by trading in securities that are distributed under an exemption from the prospectus requirement. The key point here is that the question is asking about actual activity of the CCO and not their registration. Another question I want to highlight is question E6, which is asking registrants to provide information on their revenue for the years ending 2017 and 2016. If revenue and expenses are not recorded separately for dealer activities, please provide best estimates and include a comment that the figures are estimates and explain why estimates were used. If your financial year end is different to December 31st, then please use an appropriate recalculation method to report accurate figures. When you move into the questions asking about the products the dealer has distributed, you will be asked to identify whether the products are related or connected issuers. I'm not going to go into the meanings of related and connected issuers today, but I will direct you to both the help webpage in the questionnaire and question E9 where you can find the meanings. Estella mentioned earlier today the new help page, and we would really encourage you to look at this webpage as you complete the questionnaire. I also want to highlight that if a given product fits multiple categories or no category accurately describes the product, then select Other and describe the product in the common box that is provided. Finally, I am just going to briefly highlight the 2 questions concerning sales commission and trailer commissions, as this is another area we receive a lot of inquiries about. We have provided on this slide a general meaning of these types of commissions. Typically, a sales commission is more of a one-time payment, while a trailing commission means a continuing series of payments. This concludes my discussion on some of the questions in the General, PM, IFM, and EMD sections of the questionnaire. If I haven't touched on an area that you have an inquiry on, we will shortly have a Q&A section and we can help you at that time. For now, Nirvana will talk to you about the Prospectus-Exempt funds distribution data collection.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Nirvana, and I am going to walk you through the Prospectus-Exempt fund data collection. First, a few words about the purpose of the Prospectus-Exempt fund form. This is our only source for Prospectus-Exempt funds data. This is a good way for the Commission to gain knowledge and insight into the Prospectus-Exempt fund space. We also do share some of the data across other governmental and international organizations on an aggregate basis, such as the Bank of Canada and the Financial Stability Board. I would like to emphasize here that we only provide them with data in terms of total assets or total number of funds. So we only aggregate the data, and we never provide any data on a fund level or firm-specific level. The scope of the data collection for the Prospectus-Exempt fund form. First of all, I would like to emphasize that if you do not manage, or more precisely, if you did not manage non-prospectus qualified funds as of December 31st, 2017, you do not have to submit the fund form or the spreadsheet. Also, the data is requested as of December 31st, 2017 for all questions. The only exception is the question which asks you to provide the net asset value of your fund, where you have to provide 2 time data points, December 31st, 2016 and December 31st, 2017. Also, another thing I would like to attract your attention to is that the Prospectus-Exempt funds form or spreadsheet is due June 30th, 2018, which is a month after the rest of the risk assessment questionnaire is due. A few words on what is different this year compared to previous years for those of you who have already completed the fund form before. We have slightly changed the questionnaire format for Prospectus-Exempt funds. We have introduced 2 different ways of collecting the data. So for investment fund managers which manage less than or 10 funds, they're required to submit the online fund form. And for fund managers who manage more than 10 funds, they're still required to submit the spreadsheet. So I would like to emphasize here, please, if you do manage more than 10 funds, make sure you submit the spreadsheet. And if you manage less than or 10 funds, do submit the form. Managers who manage less than 10 funds or 10 funds should not be submitting the spreadsheet. Please keep attention to that. Also, the 2 ways of collecting the data, the fund form and the spreadsheet, contain the exact same questions. And as in previous years, we have a reduced number of questions for the fund of funds. We have made some very minor changes in terms of the question content. For example, on the question where we ask you to provide the geographical exposure of your fund, we have added an extra category to encompass Asia and the Pacific region. The questions where we ask the fund's exposure to illiquid or private securities, in the fund form we have introduced a separate text box where we ask you to provide a definition of what you consider an illiquid or private security. Similarly, the question which asks what is the asset breakdown by maturity of the fund's investments, we also ask, there's a text box which also asks about what is your definition or what you included in the assets which you answered the question for. And lastly, the question where on side pocket arrangements and suspensions and restrictions, we have slightly modified the format. The options are a drop-down menu where you only answer with a yes or no, so you don't have to fill in any percentages or any other numbers. We have included only 2 new questions, which are fairly straightforward. The first one is we ask for the fund name as reported in the 2016 questionnaire. Of course, this question would only apply to funds which were operational and were reported in the 2016 risk assessment questionnaire. And also we ask about the performance fee charge at fund level in Canadian dollars. Keep in mind, we also ask for the performance fee in percentages, so this is also asking a performance fee in dollars. And we also have removed one question on high frequency trading due to low response rate. I'm going to touch on some common questions and issues in specific directions with respect to the fund form and the spreadsheet. Please pay attention to the instructions which are at the top of the Prospectus-Exempt fund spreadsheet. I'm going to reread them for you just to reiterate on some important things. First of all, please do fill in the spreadsheet with the requested information. Please do not send or attach any other documents such as income statements, balance sheets, or any marketing materials. Please do not modify the wording or the formatting of the spreadsheet. Please do not add or delete columns, rows, or tabs from the spreadsheet. Also, do not link cells with other cells or with other Excel documents. Just make sure that all numbers are hard-coded. Another important thing is if your fund has multiple asset classes and fee structures, please report all the fee data for the class which has the greatest assets under management. All other information should be reported at the fund level. Please do not answer questions with yes or no. The only exception would be the question on side pockets and suspensions and restrictions, which gives you an option for yes or no answer. Also, do not include any funds launched after the survey cutoff date, which is December 31st, 2017. And finally, please do not import any images or text from other sources. And feel free to contact me at the provided email if you experience any issues or have any questions. Here, I'd like to clarify a few questions which we have received in previous years. We've received quite a few questions on the definitions of portfolio liquidity and investor liquidity. These are probably the most subjective questions in the whole Prospectus-Exempt fund questionnaire. We pretty much ask the IFM to provide an estimate in terms of the percentage of the portfolio capable of being liquidated in the specified time buckets. Obviously, we do not assume here that you would be able to liquidate the portfolio at fair value or that you're assuming any extreme conditions. We assume that you can answer this question based on regular market conditions. And another important thing is that investor liquidity should take into account portfolio liquidity that you already answered in question 12. To give you an example of one of the new things we introduced, as I mentioned, the question on asset breakdown by maturity, you can see in red that we added an extra line where we ask you to explain what type of assets you included when answering this question. And as already mentioned, we have one question where a yes or no answer is acceptable, and this is just for example purposes here, and this is the question on side pockets and suspensions and restrictions. The next slide covers how to submit the spreadsheet. So you can use the paperclip button to attach the spreadsheet. you can use the glasses button to view an already attached document. If you want to detach the document, you can just use the little garbage bin icon and then use the paper clip to attach a different document. After you attach the spreadsheet, you will be directed to the submit page, where you have an option to provide any comments, explanations, clarifications, or feedback in the comment box at the end. I would like to give you some more specific instructions with respect to the Prospectus-Exempt fund form, which, as I mentioned, is something new in the 2018 questionnaire. One important thing to keep in mind is that you need to answer all questions for a specific fund before you can add another fund. Please keep that in mind. The system is not going to allow you to proceed and add an additional fund unless you have answered all the mandatory questions. Also, if a field or a box is yellow, it is a mandatory question and you will have to answer it. You will not be able to proceed to the next fund or to submit the form unless you have answered all questions that are marked in yellow. Questions with an option for other, for example, other strategies, other asset classes. If you enter a number in the other field, the text box in the fund form will become mandatory. You will have to provide the requested information. You will not be able to add another fund or move to the submit page until you have filled in the required box. Another important thing in the Prospectus-Exempt fund form is the questions which have an auto-sum option. As you can see, for example, question 5 on fund strategy, we ask you to provide a percentage breakdown of your fund's assets across different strategies. As you can see also, the form is pre-populated with zeros. You have the option to change the percentages based on what strategy is applicable to your fund. But if you delete any of the zeros, as you can see here, the asset-based lending is missing. The total auto sum goes to NAN, and you will not be able to save or submit the questionnaire. So please make sure that you do not delete any of the pre-populated zeros and only change the percentages of the strategies which apply to your fund. Also, I'd like to add some general comments based on questions we have received in previous years and based on some issues we have identified with previous data submissions. First of all, please make sure that all questions which ask you to provide data in dollars, all the amounts are in Canadian dollars. Please do not round in to thousands, millions, billions. Please do not write K for thousands or M for millions or B for billions. Just include raw numbers. As I already mentioned, if the question asks you to specify a definition, please do so. For example, in the other types of investors, other asset types, other strategies, fund type, other. Please make sure that the questions which ask you to allocate percentages do sum up to 100%. As I mentioned in the previous slide, with the fund form, if the auto sum is less than 100 or more than 100, you will not be able to submit the questionnaire. The questions which ask you to provide fees information, as I already mentioned, if your fund has multiple asset classes or fee structures, provide information for the largest asset class by assets under management, not by number of investors. Also, do not report different classes as different funds. If the fund does not charge any fees, you can enter 0. Also, the management expense ratio does not include the trading expense ratio. We've received some questions on securities lending fees. You can include those in the trading expense ratio. And the answers which request percentages, please enter the information in percentages. For example, if the fee is 2%, enter 2%, not 0.02. And also, when you're providing information on gross returns, make sure that those are reported net of trading fees. And I already touched on the question of asset breakdown by maturity. This question should only cover fixed income securities. Some further comments based on some questions we have received in previous years. If you do manage prospectus qualified funds, but some of the asset classes are offered without a prospectus, you do not need to report those funds. If the firm manages offshore prospectus-exempt funds, but they're not offered to Canadian investors, you do not have to report those funds in the fund form or the spreadsheet. And finally, there are some definitions applicable to certain questions which are provided in the Prospectus-Exempt Fund spreadsheet. There's a definitions tab. And also the same definitions are provided in the help document accessible through the fund form. Please read through those definitions because they will be helpful for your answers. This concludes my part on the Prospectus-Exempt Fund data collection. I will speak briefly over some of the resources that are available to you. We do have a frequently asked questions document and a user guide, which are accessible by clicking on the respective icon on the toolbar of the forum. There is also a help page in each section of the questionnaire, accessible by clicking on the help button on the toolbar of each form. Of course, you can always email us at compliancesurvey@osc.gov.on.ca, and you can call or email any of the contact people listed on the homepage of the questionnaire. This concludes the presentation part of our webinar. Now we will address the questions we have received.